The story follows the life of Wu Shishi, a woman who has ended up as a miserable unemployed person. It begins in her school days, where a teacher praises a student for speaking well before calling on Minji, a classmate. Minji confidently declares an ambitious goal of becoming the president in the future, much to the amusement of his classmates. Despite their laughter and questions, he dismisses their doubts, while the teacher jokes about remembering to raise teachers' salaries if he achieves his dream. Afterward, the teacher moves on to Shishi, another student, who shares her desire to become someone cool like her parents and work hard. Her secondary aspiration, revealed shyly behind a sheet of paper, is to indulge in all the food she desires. Years later, Wu Shishi is far from the determined and optimistic outlook of her school days. Instead, she is seen angrily throwing her game controller to the floor, frustrated after losing once again. She loudly insults her teammates, questioning their intelligence. Despite her irritation, she begrudgingly grabs a tissue to clean up the spilled liquid around her, wondering why she always ends up with clueless teammates. The state of her rented room reflects her discontent. Trash piles up around her and she compares her living space to a pigsty. Most of her time is spent gaming, with moments of maniacal laughter as she celebrates her in-game victories. Detached from reality, she remains engrossed in the digital world, immersed in the chaos of her virtual battles. When not gaming, Wu Shishi scrolls through social media, giggling at the posts she finds amusing. Her routine is one of idleness as she lounges around without purpose. Hunger eventually strikes, prompting her to acknowledge the discomfort. She realizes she hasn't eaten all day and debates whether to prepare something. In the kitchen, the sight of unwashed dishes dampens her motivation. With a lazy solution in mind, she opts for instant noodles, pouring hot water directly into the cup to avoid using any cookware. After slurping down her meal, she drinks a glass of water, savoring the brief satisfaction. To complete her indulgence, she follows it with a cup of coffee, dramatically slamming it on the table with a satisfied sigh. Declaring her current lifestyle as the dream life, she burps, fully embracing the emptiness of her existence. After finishing her instant noodles, she feels satisfied and believes it's the perfect moment to resume her game. Enthusiastically, she plays with intense focus, relishing the thrill. In the game, her character, Shishi, crawls cautiously through the grass, hiding behind a tree. With only one opponent remaining, she becomes determined, convinced that victory is within reach. She resolves to focus entirely, declaring that if she wins the match, she will even play the recording of the moment at her funeral. However, her confidence crumbles in an instant as her expression shifts from joy to confusion. Frantically, she questions what just happened. Panic sets in when she realizes she can no longer hear the game's sounds. Annoyed, she reasons that it's because she wasn't using headphones, claiming they're uncomfortable. Still, she briefly contemplates whether putting them on might have prevented the issue. Ultimately, she dismisses the thought, asserting that her full concentration is necessary. Despite her determination, the outcome is disastrous. Her character is suddenly eliminated. Furious, she throws her arms up in exasperation, slamming the table in frustration. The impact sends the remaining noodles tumbling to the floor. The liquid splashes across the room, staining both the floor and her face. Stunned, she stares at the mess, overwhelmed. She hastily attempts to clean the stains, growing increasingly frustrated when they refuse to come out. Concerned, she wonders if she will have to pay for any damage, but her greater worry is her mother finding out and reprimanding her. In a final, desperate attempt, she grabs a cloth and starts scrubbing the stains on the wall. Realizing the marks aren't fading, she climbs onto her computer desk, determined to make the wall suffer for her frustration. She scrubs aggressively, shouting in anger, her face twisted in madness. Her laughter echoes through the room as she curses at the wall, continuing her erratic behavior. At 26 years old, she has been unemployed for 2 years, and her actions suggest a lingering immaturity. Despite this, she suddenly bursts into laughter, announcing that she's satisfied and ready to climb down. However, as she steps off the desk, she slips. Outside, a delivery truck arrives, parking in front of the building. A delivery man holding a package ascends the stairs to the 3rd floor. Upon reaching apartment 303, he knocks on the door and calls out for Shishi, visibly frustrated as he removes his gloves. Annoyed, he complains about her never being home and turns to leave. Moments later, faint footsteps echo in the apartment hallway. Shishi, concealed behind the door, anxiously listens. Convinced the delivery man is gone, she cautiously peers outside. She has a habit of pretending not to be home whenever someone visits. Silently, she drags the package inside and opens it. Inside, she finds an assortment of food preserved with ice. Sighing, she complains that her mother didn't need to send anything, insisting she had already told her to stop sending food. Despite her complaints, curiosity takes over as she checks the contents. The first thing she notices is a package of spicy shredded squid. She immediately remarks on how delicious it looks, feeling an instant craving. Next, she pulls out another heavier package. Upon examining it, she deduces it's roast beef. Though reluctant to admit it, the sight of the food visibly excites her. She continues her day by inspecting the contents of the box her mother sent. Upon opening another package, she reacts with disgust, realizing it's fried seaweed. Despite her displeasure, she decides to store the box in the refrigerator and organize it later. However, when she opens the refrigerator, she notices it's completely full. Annoyed, she complains about the lack of space and decides to empty it. She throws away an old, mysterious item she refers to as an artifact, puzzled at how long it had been there. Afterward, she bends down to retrieve a glass of coffee and a packet of ketchup, followed by a box of homemade cheese and other miscellaneous items, including a package of noodles. As she removes these items, she marvels at the empty space in the refrigerator, pleased with the progress. Among the clutter, she unexpectedly finds her long-lost cell phone charger and smiles in delight. Satisfied with the cleared space, she begins organizing everything. Upon finishing, she turns around and realizes that the discarded items now occupy the sink. Faced with the task of cleaning up, she becomes frustrated, noting the pile of dirty dishes. With no other choice, she reluctantly starts washing them. While rinsing off the food remnants, she complains about the overwhelming stench emanating from the sink. In the midst of cleaning, she stumbles upon a suspicious nylon bag. Curiosity gets the better of her and she cautiously peeks inside. To her horror, she finds a bizarre purple goo, questioning whether it was once food. Despite her disgust, she leans in to take a sniff, recoiling in revulsion. Overwhelmed, she curses the foul substance, declaring it a demon that should burn in hell before hastily disposing of it. Reflecting on her tendency to neglect the food her mother sends, she admits she often prefers instant noodles or delivery meals. Determined to make a change, she puts on gloves and resolves to reduce her reliance on takeout. She decides to eat all the food her mother sent, reasoning that a healthier diet will also save her money. With renewed purpose, she continues washing the dishes. After completing her housework, night falls. Exhausted, she laments how quickly the day passed and complains about her hunger. Eager for something satisfying, she opens the refrigerator and immediately chooses the spicy shredded squid. As she eats, she contemplates making a cup of coffee to enjoy afterward. Later, she recalls her distaste for the fried seaweed. Although she initially found it bland, she grudgingly admits that it wasn't so bad after all. While others are finishing their workdays and returning home, she remains in her apartment. At 26 years old, she is unemployed and lives with her days and nights reversed. Unexpectedly, she wakes up, suddenly feeling the urge to use the bathroom. Stretching and yawning, she complains about her lingering sleepiness. Checking her phone, she is startled to see the time, 6:30 a.m. She realizes she played games late into the night and only managed to sleep for a few hours. After some quick mental calculations, it dawns on her that morning has already arrived. In a panic, she rushes around in desperation. Eventually, she manages to settle down, relieved to have avoided a bigger problem. As a reward in her game, she receives a propeller hat. Amused by its appearance, she admires how cute it looks and carefully stores it in her treasure chest. Feeling content, she contemplates whether she should tackle the next mission. Without much hesitation, she dives back into the game, ready for another round. She spends hours playing her game, but after a while, she starts to complain about back pain. Slouching further in her chair, she comments on feeling at peace, as if something is filling her up. Frustrated with the lack of excitement in RPG games compared to fighting games, she curses her opponent, challenging them to confront her in real life. Despite her irritation, she continues playing, assuming the role of her character named Help Me Clean Up. In the game, she encounters an opponent named Jinfuzi's 97-year-old grandma's last fireball. The opponent demands that she leave their territory immediately, threatening to kill her character if she refuses. However, she swiftly counters with a powerful hammer punch, crushing her enemy. Mocking the defeated opponent, she sarcastically questions their bravado, taking pleasure in her victory. Despite the opponent's threats to seek revenge, she confidently provokes her to try again, showing no concern. Laughing, she expresses her excitement over the intensity of the match. Soon after, she becomes astonished upon discovering a super rare dwarf monster, known to drop large amounts of gold coins. Ecstatic at the opportunity, she declares her intent to catch the monster and sell the loot for fried chicken. However, things take a sudden turn as she fails to capture it, leaving her bewildered. Her opponent seizes the moment to taunt her, bragging about stealing 50,000 gold coins. She, furious over the loss of what she considers her entire fortune, demands the coins back. Her opponent, relishing the victory, continues to mock her, even claiming to see her furious expression through the screen. The relentless insults escalate, with the opponent calling Shishi a walking kettle, and making jokes about her apparent rage. The mockery becomes increasingly exaggerated, suggesting that her anger could contribute to global warming and that her head is so hot it could fry an egg. Despite the humiliating defeat, Shishi announces her departure from the game, citing her responsibilities as a landlord managing 2 tenants. Before logging off, her opponent sarcastically warns her about running multiple games simultaneously, predicting her account may be banned. Once out of the game, Shishi dismisses the insults, believing her opponents are just venting their frustrations. She scoffs at their immaturity, finding their behavior childish for adults. Planning to correct her disrupted sleep schedule, she resolves to sleep early that night, feeling slightly accomplished by the thought alone. However, her determination quickly crumbles as she jumps out of bed in a fit of rage, furious at the thought of her opponents believing they won. Unable to let it go, she returns to her computer, intent on retaliation. Fueling her frustration, she opens a notepad and writes a harsh message filled with insults, calling her opponents childish idiots and declaring that their lives are already headed towards ruin. Without hesitation, she copies the message and sends it directly to her opponents in the game chat. Satisfied with her final words, she quickly turns off her computer before they can respond, believing she has had the last laugh. She stretches wearily as she rises from her chair, triumphantly declaring her victory. Covering herself, she compares her relief to finally coughing up stubborn phlegm that has plagued her for years, believing she can now sleep peacefully. The next day, as dusk settles, she wakes up and attempts to log into the game, only to find her account banned for 7 days due to player insults and uncivilized behavior. Kneeling before the computer, she stares desolately at the screen, overwhelmed by regret. Shortly after, a notification arrives, confirming that her appeal against the punishment was denied based on the game's regulations. The message advises her to contact customer service for further inquiries. Frustrated, she quickly sends a message introducing herself and stating her foul mood. She then laments her suffering, convinced that only fried chicken can soothe her pain. Without hesitation, she orders a fried chicken combo but immediately complains about the delivery fee. Checking her account balance, she panics upon realizing she has only 20,001 remaining, roughly equivalent to 60 WAN. Fearful of how she will survive the week with such limited funds, she bitterly curses the 2 opponents she blames for her account suspension. She regrets not being able to sell in-game gold to get by and considers her finances further, reassured that her mother won't need money from her. Grabbing her phone, she calls her mother, asking if she is available. After admitting she is out of money, her mother berates her for her reckless spending, calling her a financial black hole. She scolds her daughter for her inability to earn or save money, comparing her spending habits to a destructive tornado. She protests, demanding her mother stop the lecture, frustrated that the reprimand has lasted 2 minutes. Hanging up, she ponders how to stretch her remaining funds for the week. She debates methods to cut costs, resolving to cook at home instead of buying convenience store snacks or takeout. However, she quickly concedes she cannot resist her coffee cravings. She turns to her computer, searching online for solutions. After spending considerable time lying in bed, she suddenly recalls her subscription to a video platform, alarmed by the realization that the renewal deadline is the day after tomorrow. The monthly fee of 10,000 worries her further. Springing up, she consoles herself with the thought that she can still watch videos without renewing the subscription. Determined to cancel for now, she reassures herself that she can subscribe again once she has more money. Proud of her decision, she wiggles her feet in delight, humorously considering herself a genius. Meanwhile, outside her window, 2 stray cats noisily fight near the garbage. Annoyed, she complains about the ruckus, wondering if people or animals ever tire. On her computer screen, a blond man sings dramatically about the connection between hitting and loving, proclaiming his intense affection. She chuckles at the absurdity, but her amusement is interrupted by an unfamiliar noise. Confused, she questions whether it is part of the video, only to see 2 level 10 police officers appear on screen in pursuit of a thief. Recognizing the chaotic scenario, she recalls that her subscription is expiring, realizing the commotion is an advertisement. A level 1 thief sprints across the screen, clutching a briefcase as the police chase him. Suddenly, a level 30 boss emerges, laughing menacingly. Shishi stares in disbelief, bewildered by the ad's bizarre narrative and struggling to discern what product it is promoting. Later, while washing the dishes, she bursts into laughter, amused by the ridiculousness of the commercials. Another 2-minute advertisement soon follows. Next, a dramatic scenario unfolds between two women, presenting viewers with the unsettling choice to marry her or hit her. Disgusted, Shishi's frustration reaches its peak. Trembling with irritation, she accidentally drops a plate into the sink, exasperated by the relentless onslaught of advertisements. Shishi, feeling exhausted, throws herself onto her bed, frustrated that her account has been blocked. With no games to play, she decides to watch a movie recap. As she lies down, a 5-minute advertisement interrupts her viewing, featuring a boxer throwing a punch. Irritated but curious, she resigns herself to watching the ad. It showcases a knight facing a minotaur in a puzzle game. Observing it closely, she confidently analyzes the game, convinced that solving the puzzle is obvious by simply moving obstacles and grabbing the treasure. However, when the character in the ad fails, Shishi is unexpectedly drawn in and wonders what the game is called. Her curiosity gets the best of her as she searches for it, commenting on how the frustrating ad still managed to pique her interest. She soon discovers that the puzzle game was not as it seemed, comparing the misleading advertisement to the deceptive packaging of convenience store hamburgers. Still hesitant, she considers subscribing to YouTube Premium to avoid more ads. The monthly fee is 10 yuan, with the renewal deadline on April 30, 2023. Weighing her options, she concludes that skipping 2 cups of coffee would cover the subscription cost. With a resigned sigh, she decides to give in, acknowledging that she has once again succumbed to capitalism. With the ads gone, she finally enjoys a video, laughing at its humor. She dismisses any concerns about her financial situation, deciding to worry when her money truly runs out. As she eats instant noodles in her cluttered room, a cat meows in the background. To her surprise, a cat video appears on her screen, puzzling her since she never searched for such content. She reasons that it might be a recommendation based on her recent viewings of animal compilations. The video shows a cat knocking something over, prompting Shishi to grumble about the chaos cats create. She complains about how they wreck homes, laze around, devour food, and leap into pots. Annoyed, she insists that she would throw out any cat daring to enter her house. Yet, as she reflects on her own situation, a wave of realization washes over her. Feeling dissatisfied, Shishi laments that plain noodles are dull and wishes for a cup of coffee to complete the meal. A sudden burp escapes her, coinciding with a notification from her bank. The message reveals that her funds have been almost entirely drained due to numerous supermarket transactions throughout the month, leaving her nearly penniless. Later, Shishi strolls down the street, lamenting that she simply cannot live without coffee, declaring it the only joy in her life. She even claims that caffeine courses through her veins. As the bright morning sun irritates her, a chorus of cat meows grabs her attention. Several cats are seen cornering a black kitten that helplessly wags its tail in defense. Despite her irritation, Shishi becomes visibly upset at the sight. Frustrated, she complains about the cats' constant fights and how they frequently tear apart garbage bags. She also grumbles about their incessant nighttime howling and their tendency to scatter the moment anyone approaches. Although she declares her disdain for them, the scene before her tugs at her heart. With a sudden burst of determination, Shishi shoos the aggressive cats away, sending them scurrying. She then boldly asserts her dominance, claiming the territory as her own and warning any intruders that crossing her path means certain doom. Shishi notices the black kitten approaching her. Observing its demeanor, she remarks on how depressed it seems. Despite her initial hesitation and a warning for it to stay away, the cat rubs affectionately against her leg. Conflicted, Shishi contemplates petting it, but before she can act, the cat turns and walks away, leaving her frustrated. She recalls her intention to buy coffee, but after succumbing to a promotion offering 3 rice cakes for the price of 2, she spent her remaining money. Checking her balance, she laments her financial state, realizing she is once again broke with only 200 yuan left. Reflecting on her circumstances, she wonders if anyone could rival her experience with being broke. Briefly considering asking her mother for money, her thoughts are interrupted when she unexpectedly encounters the same black cat. The sight of it amuses her, but she quickly turns away. The kitten's fearful meowing catches her attention. Noticing it isn't fleeing this time, she recalls a video suggesting that cats enjoy being petted on their lower back. Curious, she hesitantly tries it. The cat, instead of running, lies down and meows, surprising her with its reaction. As she remains crouched, Shishi's mind drifts to imagine scenarios of playing with the kitten, taking pictures together and snuggling up to sleep. Quickly snapping back to reality, she acknowledges the cat's cuteness and offers to share some of her food. Although she initially bought the meal for herself, she decides it's fair to split it with the cat. She tears off a piece of fried chicken and playfully waves it in front of the kitten. The cat's wide-eyed expression quickly shifts to sudden action as it leaps at the food. The unexpected pounce shocks Shishi, and she demands to know why the cat acted so aggressively. Caught off guard, Shishi slips and crashes to the ground, sending her treasured coffee spilling everywhere. The black cat, satisfied with its sudden attack, swiftly jumps away while Shishi remains sprawled on the floor. Glaring at the sky in disbelief, she curses the cat, lamenting the loss of her precious coffee. Faced with her ruined drink, Shishi grimly accepts her fate. Yet, with her resilience kicking in, she decides that the coffee might still be salvageable, believing that as long as the parts touching the ground are scraped away, it remains drinkable. She grimaces as she attempts to recover her beverage, grumbling about how much the coffee-soaked food stuck to it. Back at her apartment, two men are unloading goods on the sidewalk. Shishi, now in her dark and disorganized room, stretches wearily. The daylight pouring through the window emphasizes her exhaustion. With a loud yawn, she complains about the bright sun and contemplates finally going to sleep. Throwing herself onto the bed, she wraps herself in her blanket, savoring the warmth. She mutters that the comfort of collapsing into bed after gaming until near exhaustion is unmatched. Deciding she has had enough for the day, Shishi tosses her phone aside and prepares to sleep. Suddenly, a loud knock jolts her awake. Startled, she lets out a scream and frantically stumbles out of bed, mumbling incoherently. Looking out the window, she finds no visible source of the noise and speculates whether it might have come from inside the building. Still disoriented, she opens her bedroom door. Annoyed, she criticizes the inconsiderate timing of whoever is drilling at such an early hour. Returning to her room, she grumbles about her lack of sleep, noting she only managed 2 hours of rest. The relentless noise frays her patience, and she repeatedly yells for it to stop. Amid her frustration, uncontrollable laughter echoes through the hallway. Perplexed, Shishi questions who could be laughing so incessantly. She storms out of her apartment, determined to confront her disruptive neighbors. Irritated, she criticizes their lack of consideration, knowing full well how thin the walls are. She approaches their open door, brimming with resolve to reprimand them. However, upon entering, she is met with the unsettling sight of a suspicious couple drinking in a dimly lit room. Their expressions twist in irritation as they mutter curses under their breath. Staring in disbelief, Shishi's eyes widen in shock. Realizing her mistake, she forces an awkward smile and meekly utters an apology. Without wasting another moment, she flees the scene, bolting from the apartment while her disgruntled neighbors continue to hurl insults at her. Shishi hurriedly descends the building's fire escape, panting and visibly shaken, reflecting on her narrow escape. She recalls how terrifying the man looked and realizes she never paid attention to how thin the building's walls were, concluding that the residents there are strange and that cheap housing often comes with its drawbacks. Deciding to avoid her apartment until the situation calms down, she takes a walk. While walking, she suddenly witnesses a heated argument between two women. One woman, dressed in yellow, confronts another about feeding the cats in the area. Shishi is startled and confused as the argument unfolds. The woman in yellow complains about losing sleep due to the noise, while the other, a burly woman, defends her actions, claiming the cats' lives depend on her kindness. The woman in yellow, noticing Shishi nearby, pulls her into the argument, asking her to confirm how disruptive the cats have been. Shishi hesitantly agrees but quickly finds herself regretting her involvement. The burly woman, now addressing Shishi, passionately argues that the cats would starve without her help. Shishi stammers, struggling to respond, wondering how she ended up in the middle of this situation. Feeling the need to assert herself, Shishi suddenly adopts a dramatic persona, introducing herself as Guy Baeksun, and making a bold declaration. However, the burly woman responds aggressively, grabbing the woman in yellow by the hair. The situation escalates as the woman in yellow cries out in pain, begging for release. Just then, the tense moment is interrupted by the sound of a bottle breaking. Two drunken men emerge from the apartment building, visibly annoyed by the commotion. One of the drunks demands silence, irritated by the noise. Taking advantage of the distraction, Shishi quickly seizes the opportunity to slip away. After fleeing the scene, she stops at a corner, breathless and overwhelmed. She complains about how exhausting the run was, especially since she hasn't run in years and feels nauseous. Frustrated, she reflects on the chaotic neighborhood, questioning whether she truly lives in a developed country. Determined to leave the area one day, she dreams of winning the lottery and moving to a luxurious, peaceful neighborhood. She envisions a spacious apartment with a beautiful view, where she can start her mornings under the sunlight. In desperation, she clasps her hands and prays for divine intervention, hoping for free money every month. With that, the once cynical Shishi momentarily becomes a devout believer. Feeling relieved that the commotion has subsided, she sneaks back into her apartment as quietly as possible, tiptoeing to avoid any further disturbances. Later, on a bus, another woman listens to the onboard announcement as the vehicle approaches the Makjongdong Community Center. She reminds herself that this is her stop and disembarks, checking her map. Pleased with how easily she navigated the area, she reflects on the convenience of modern transportation and offers a quick thanks to God. Back in her dark, cluttered apartment, Shishi sits in front of her computer, engrossed in cat videos. The sight of playful kittens fills her screen as her phone vibrates, interrupting her. Despite her financial struggles, she finds herself addicted to these videos. Unable to afford her usual games and with no other form of entertainment, she resorts to endlessly scrolling through YouTube, lamenting her current predicament. Shishi checks the time on her computer and remembers it's the day she receives her allowance. She wonders where her mother is, while noticing the unusual commotion of her neighbors in the middle of the day. Sighing, she remarks that being bored worked out perfectly after all. She gets up, feeling the day's seductive vibe, but suddenly a woman stands in front of her door, room 303, searching for the password she wrote down. Opening the door, Shishi's mother appears, exhausted, mentioning that she only stopped by to check on her daughter. However, she's greeted with the sight of Shishi in a completely messy room, engaged in a private moment while imagining an imaginary someone touching her. Witnessing this, her mother is left speechless. Calling out to her daughter, she startles Shishi, who panics upon realizing her mother has walked in. Despite the awkwardness, her mother expresses relief that Shishi is okay. Trying to regain composure, Shishi nervously questions when her mother arrived, but her mother, visibly annoyed, yells at her to stop being so irritating. She curses, telling her daughter to come down immediately, slapping her on the back. Shishi yelps in response. Afterward, her mother laughs, sarcastically questioning if the place is even suitable for human living. She criticizes the dirty clothes and piles of trash, mockingly calling Shishi the princess of trash. Defensively, Shishi insists she usually cleans, claiming her mother just happened to show up on the one day she hadn't. Unimpressed, her mother dismisses the excuse and is further shocked by the sight of water stains in the bathroom. She jokes that even a ghost might come out of the filth. Then, voicing her concern that no man will want to marry her daughter if she continues living like this, she suddenly notices 2 toothbrushes. Hopeful, she asks if Shishi is finally dating someone. But to her disappointment, Shishi clarifies that she simply replaced her toothbrush, leaving the old one to throw away later. Her mother, frustrated, orders her to dispose of it immediately. Continuing her criticism, she complains that the floor is sticky and commands Shishi to wash the cloth and clean the apartment properly. Shishi protests, calling her mother annoying but promises to take care of it later. However, with a chilling smile, her mother insists they find the mop right away. Reluctantly, Shishi starts cleaning. After wiping the window frame, she claims to be done, but her mother, unconvinced, orders her to clean it again. While grumbling, Shishi hastily piles clothes into the closet, earning yet another scolding. Her mother criticizes her for not folding the clothes properly. Later, as Shishi puts the trash into plastic bags, her mother scolds her for not separating the recyclables and questions whether she thinks trash bags are free. Exhausted, Shishi scrubs the floor with a cloth, but her mother insists she needs to scrub properly, warning that if she sleeps without doing so, she'll breathe in all the dust. Unable to bear it anymore, Shishi collapses onto the floor. Her mother finally acknowledges that the apartment is starting to look like a livable space and demands Shishi get up. Still lying on the floor, Shishi mumbles under her breath. Her mother then asks if she's still committed to what she planned to do after quitting her job, mentioning that Shishi had said something about writing. Shishi affirms her intentions, and her mother, though apathetic, offers some encouragement, saying that persistence may eventually lead to results. Soon she hands her daughter something. Curious, Shishi asks what it is. Her mother explains that it's her allowance, causing Shishi to exclaim in surprise, claiming her jaw nearly dropped. With a somewhat satisfied expression, her mother says she simply wanted to check on her daughter while delivering the money. She then announces her departure, adding that she spent all her time helping clean the apartment. Standing on the sidewalk, she bids her mother a safe trip home, while her mother advises her to work hard before she marries her off. She chuckles as she heads back inside, taking off her shoes and laughing to herself. Once in her room, she holds the money to her nose, savoring its scent. Nostalgically, she remarks how much she missed the smell, saying she'll deposit it in her bank account soon. She is about to savor the moment when someone suddenly knocks on her door. The voice identifies itself as her neighbor and demands that she open up, claiming to have overheard everything from earlier. Meanwhile, her mother, now on a bus, estimates it will take 3 hours to get home and decides to nap during the ride. Back at her apartment, she grows anxious, questioning her neighbor's aggressive behavior. She suspects the noise she made against the wall during her intimate moment might have drawn attention. Realizing she never considered how to handle this situation, she panics and wonders what to do. Trying to stay unnoticed, she debates her options before recalling an online story about neighbors resolving noise complaints. As the knocking persists, she hastily adopts an absurd strategy, pretending to be insane. With exaggerated laughter and nonsensical remarks about prison food and knife dances, she opens the door hoping to scare off the intruder. However, instead of a stranger, she finds herself face to face with a blonde woman in a yellow shirt. Recognizing her from an earlier encounter, the woman comments on Shishi's distinctive dark circles, confirming her suspicions. The young woman's eyes widen in shock as she fully registers who stands before her. Without a word, she slams the door shut, overwhelmed by disbelief. The blonde reacts with irritation, complaining about the abrupt dismissal. Inside, Shishi paces nervously, realizing that her strategy failed. Convinced she can't avoid the inevitable, she reluctantly reopens the door. The neighbor, arms crossed, confronts her directly. She reprimands Shishi for disregarding proper etiquette, emphasizing the building's poor soundproofing. The young woman stammers, attempting a defense, but her neighbor counters sharply, detailing the disruptive noises she heard, including slaps and chaotic commotion. In an attempt to clear her name, Shishi blurts out that she doesn't even have a boyfriend. The immediate realization of her statement hits her, leaving her horrified. Her thoughts spiral as she debates between fabricating a story about a non-existent partner or admitting she had been watching adult content alone at full volume. The blonde simply stares at her, unimpressed. After a tense pause, the neighbor declares she has no choice but to leave, warning Shishi that any future disturbances won't be tolerated. As the woman turns away, Shishi seethes with frustration, cursing her neighbor under her breath. Convinced she had been unfairly reprimanded, she slams the door shut. The blonde briefly glances back at the noise, but Shishi remains pressed against the door, lamenting her bad luck. Returning to her cluttered room, Shishi retrieves the money her mother left behind. She closes the curtains, enveloping the space in darkness. Overwhelmed, she burrows into her blanket, resolving that the best remedy for her stress is sleep. Determined to avoid her neighbor the next day, she plans to head to the bank early. The following morning, Shishi leaves her apartment, still dwelling on the unpleasant encounter. Despite the lingering frustration, the sight of her wallet filled with cash lifts her spirits. She walks with renewed enthusiasm, hoping the day ahead will fare better than the last. Shishi's morning takes an unexpected turn when she hears a sniffle beside her. To her dismay, she sees her neighbor, the very person she wanted to avoid, sitting on the ground with a bruised face and a sorrowful expression. The blonde woman, now tearful, calls out to Shishi, questioning why everyone abandons her. Despite her reluctance, Shishi cautiously approaches, immediately noticing the strong stench of alcohol. When she asks if the blonde really remained in such a state all night, the woman responds with a sniffle, launching into a rant. She laments her fourth breakup of the year, blaming her ballless boyfriend who accused her of being emotionally needy. Shishi, uncertain how to respond, admits she has little understanding of love. This only encourages the blonde to continue her rambling. She suggests that the noises she overheard from Shishi's apartment must have been from an exciting encounter, teasing that Shishi knows how to have a good time. Then abruptly the blonde asks Shishi age. After revealing she is 22, Shishi reluctantly admits she is 26. Before she can excuse herself, the blonde introduces herself as Cha Yojin and demands to know Shishi's name. Panicking, Shishi fabricates a name on the spot, calling herself Gai Baek Sunday. Yojin remarks that the name sounds unique, to which Shishi nervously agrees. Trying to end the awkward encounter, Shishi makes an excuse to leave. However, Yojin desperately begs her not to go, pleading not to be left alone. Suddenly, the blonde lunges forward, wrapping her arms around Shishi in a tight hug. Shishi, overwhelmed and confused, attempts to process the situation. Without warning, Yojin vomits onto her sweatshirt, escalating the situation from uncomfortable to unbearable. In a mixture of disgust and frustration, Shishi forcefully shoves the blonde away. An elderly man passing by watches the commotion in bewilderment. Furious, she zickerses at Yojin and storms off, while the blonde remains on the ground, apologizing repeatedly. Covering her face with her hoodie, she tries to slip away unnoticed. Her hopes are dashed when a curious child loudly points out that she looks as though she pooped through her stomach.